Welcome to the Brand Theory Podcast, the podcast for helping you uncover your passion, realize your purpose, and take the aligned action. Together, we're going to prove the theory that when we live our lives on brand, the possibilities become limitless. I'm your host, Danielle Marquesi, branding expert and business coach. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Brand Theory Podcast. Today, we are talking to Tara Reid, a multi-passionate and creative entrepreneur who helps female entrepreneurs grow and scale their business. And she actually caters a lot of content to her fellow introvert entrepreneurs. Yes, it is possible to run a very successful business and be an introvert and be inside that comfort zone, as I like to say, slightly outside. We want to push ourselves a little bit, but definitely inside a place where you feel safe and confident as well. Before we jump into her full bio and her full episode, I do want to give you a reminder of our summer sale on our brand audits. Think of this like taking your brand and your business to the doctor. It's a little bit of a check-in. Maybe you're not feeling so great about some things. You're not feeling great about your procedures, your strategies in place. You're not really sure if your messaging is communicating what you want it to be based on the lack of clients coming to you or the type of clients that are kind of reaching out. Maybe that's not who you want to be working with anymore. So this is your opportunity to kind of get that outside perspective from somebody who has been there before multiple times and also can just look in from a brand perspective, from a customer perspective, from a marketing perspective, and work with you to adjust any strategies that you have in place to put you back on the path that's going to bring you the results that you actually desire, hopefully sooner rather than later. So link is in the show notes to book that in. Limited spots per month. I take a couple per month, but if you can't find an appointment in this month, you can always look for the following months. Or if you don't see a time that works, shoot me a DM over on Instagram and we will get something set up for you. So in today's episode, again, we are talking to Tara Reid, a multi-passionate entrepreneur for over 16 years. She is currently a business and marketing coach, obviously while we're chatting, and who helps female entrepreneurs with organic marketing, content creation, and creating additional revenue streams. She's also the founder of Entrepreneur Templates and the host of the Introvertpreneur podcast for introverted business owners. Without further ado, let's get into this episode. Welcome to the show, Tara.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you about a lot of different things, but something that I really want to dive into is kind of your journey as an introvert, being an introvert and being a successful business owner. So I'm super excited to dive into that. But first, let's start with the definite first question we have to ask all of our guests. Tell us a little bit about who you are, your journey thus far, and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I always try to, I'm still in the process of keeping this short, but I've been an entrepreneur for 16 years. So it's been a long journey with lots of ups and downs and twists and turns and pivots. I initially started with a handmade jewelry business that I grew to 6 figures, and then I sold that business. But through that business, I started helping other entrepreneurs get more visible and get more sales and get more clients. So that's where I kind of shifted into the service world. So right now I call myself a business and marketing coach. And primarily I work with a lot of introverts like myself because I'm a huge introvert, learn better ways and strategies that they can get visibility, grow their business, market their business, that aren't so extroverted or outside of your comfort zone. I know everyone says that you need to go out of your comfort zone, but for me, that's not really something I want to do day after day. That's not sustainable for me. So I really wanted to find ways to grow and market that weren't so stressful to me.
Love that. Was this something, and probably not, you always thought you would be doing? Or I guess, did you always think you'd be running your own business, or was this something that just kind of happened for you?
So I always did have an entrepreneurship kind of spirit. So I felt like that was going to be the best path for me. I didn't really have an idea of what that was going to look like. And I really didn't think it would involve creating courses or doing coaching or training people. I feel like that is still outside my comfort zone as an introvert and something that I never expected to do. But It is really what I love to do and help other introverts who right now are feeling like I was at the beginning. Like I
Hmm.
forced myself to go on video all the time, pretend to be more extroverted, and it was just so exhausting.
Yeah. And I don't know if I want to talk about this now or wait a little bit, but I really want to know what that was like when you were trying to do all those things. You were kind of like trying to keep up with what we think we have to do. Was there a moment where, or take us to that moment where you said, I can't do this anymore, and you realize that there's got to be a different way?
Yeah, I definitely had a breakthrough moment, as I call it, where I was just like, why am I doing this? I'm building a business because I want freedom and to love what I do. And I'm not loving what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So if this is what it's going to look like, I don't want to do it. And I'll go back to a 9 to 5 job. So I really took a hard look at like, okay, how can I grow my business, be visible without doing all these things that I feel like I have to do. And I think a big part of that was really, I think acceptance was a big part, like accepting I'm an introvert and it's okay. Like, I don't need to do all of these things. I don't need to do live videos. I don't need to do live webinars. I don't need to show up constantly on social media. And even when I was in it and I was pretending and doing all the things and totally stressed out, I ended up, once I had that clarity moment, I went back and watched some of the lives that I did. And I realized, they're not even getting results because you can tell it's not authentic. I'm not having fun. I'm trying to force myself to be somebody that I'm not. So I was stressing myself out and forcing myself to do this, and they weren't even getting results because people
Yeah.
could easily tell that it was not me.
Yeah, and we're very big on that in the brand theory podcast of I like to present all these different things that you can do and talk about things that have worked for me and talk about things that have worked for our guests, but it really has to come from that place of your heart, I think. And
Mhm.
I think there's always a level of being uncomfortably comfortable, like just slightly going outside the comfort zone, but in a way that like really works for you. And in a way you're like, okay, I can do this. That's not going to stress me out to the point of burnout. That's not going to make me feel crazy. That's like, I can do that. I can challenge myself just a little bit in that realm. So I love that you were able to realize that these things weren't for you and figure out a way that is for you. So that's where I'd really like to talk about what is the way that works for you. So what are some of your different ways that you market yourself if you're not necessarily on social media all the time?
Yeah. So for me, I always talk about the 4 marketing methods that I recommend for introverts. So it's blogging, email marketing, Pinterest, and then social media if your audience is on social media. So you have to be there. There is a way to make it more focused on attraction content versus having to feel like you constantly have to be somebody that you're not, do reels, do lives, do um, hours of engagement every day, because that's just exhausting for most introverts. So those are the 4 methods. I usually recommend picking one and then having a secondary one that kind of works along with it. So for me, my primary one is definitely blogging. I feel like blogging is, well, I studied SEO since I was like 12. I started to learn how to rank on Google and get organic traffic. And I think that is probably the most powerful method for introverts, is to bring clients who are actively looking for you and customers who are actively searching for what you do from a search engine, getting them to land on your website. Like, these are warm leads. They're coming to you. You don't have to go out and hustle to find them.
Yeah. So you mentioned something about SEO. So I just want to ask a quick question about that. You said you started about 12 years ago. Has it changed much since then?
So actually I started when I was 12. So that's like
Oh, when you were 12. Sorry.
24 years ago. So
24 years ago. Okay.
it's definitely changed a lot over the years. I think a lot of people, when it comes to SEO, it feels very technical. So it's not very fun for most people. Um, and I think a lot of times we make it overly complicated than it needs to be.
Like a lot of things.
Yes. So really it's just about finding the right keywords and optimizing your website so that you're ranking in search engines, which it is a long-term strategy. You're not going to get results overnight. But that's why I really love it. Like long-term strategy equals long-term results, which for an introvert is fantastic.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but with SEO, it's like you kind of set it and forget it, right? And if there's a change, let's say I don't really even know because I'm not that experienced with SEO, I just know the very basics, but say there was a change to the way we did it, I feel as though it's an addition. Like what you have there wouldn't necessarily be a mute point, or it wouldn't then hurt your rankings. If these new things were to come around and you were to add to it, it would only add to your rankings or your ability to be visible, rather than, let's say, Instagram changes the algorithm every 2 months and we all go crazy to try to keep up with it. And everything that we were doing is kind of like a mute point. Does that make sense? Or am I
Yeah.
making that up?
No, that's absolutely true. When it comes to SEO, there's like the foundational pieces really never change. Like there's always updates and tweaks and things that the search engine looks at more with and algorithm updates, but the core of SEO and the keywords and how to optimize your pages, that really hasn't changed in ever.
Okay. So that's good to know. So it's definitely something that I should probably look better at. But can you tell us maybe a place if we did want to learn more about it and how to kind of start using it to the best of our abilities, and not just those, yeah, I know I have to do this. I'm going to plug these metadata tags in. Is there a place that we can go to learn some of that? Or is that something that you teach your community at all?
Yeah. So one thing I did, because I know it's such a powerful thing, SEO, like I've seen, and I build sites, like I probably build a new site every month now. So I've seen the potential and the possibility of SEO, and so many people aren't using it. So I actually created a easy SEO mini course, and it can be done in one afternoon. It covers all the core, most important stuff without the technical jargon. It's very easy to understand, even if you've never heard of SEO or you have tried to dive into it and it's completely confusing. The mini course is for that and for those people who want to get organic traffic, but they don't want to, because I feel like a lot of people who teach SEO, they go way too deep. They go into like all the technical aspects of it, all of the off-page SEO, where I just focus on the on-page, because that's really what we can control, is how we are structuring our copy, our headings, our images, and our websites.
Okay, cool. So good to know. So I'll definitely drop that in the show notes too for anybody interested. I think Pinterest works the same way, as a kind of, not the same way, but they're more an SEO engine than a social media platform, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Pinterest is a visual search engine. So it's really similar to Google search and getting organic traffic from search engines, but it's its own separate platform. So you do want to do keyword research on Pinterest. You want to optimize your account, your pin descriptions. But then because it's visual, it also adds in the design element of your pins. But it's also long-term strategy for long-term results.
Yeah.
My most popular pin, I pinned like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it's still driving about 200, 300 people to my website every month.
Really? And what is that pin about?
It's to one of my blog posts. It's about how I became booked out within 2 months as a virtual assistant.
Wow. Okay, so let's circle back to the blogging thing, because that's how this
Mhm.
this started. So how often do you blog for your business? And is it kind of topics that you've seen, or I guess, how do you come up with your topics rather than trying to answer the question for you?
Yeah, for me, I do a lot of different ways. So I'm big on repurposing content too.
Mhm.
So if I look back at, like, if you're active on social media, look back at some of the most popular posts that you've shared, most popular captions, the ones that got the most likes or comments or engagement or shares or saves. And those are really great topics that you can repurpose and turn into a blog post. Um, I also really like to have content pillars. So I kind of stick to some topics that lead into my offers or my courses and things that I have available for sale as well, or my lead magnets, my freebies. I do focus a lot on email marketing too, but they all work together with blogging. If
Yeah.
blogging is your main, then you can incorporate email and you can incorporate Pinterest so easily. And it's like the organic traffic trifecta.
Yeah, totally. So let's say you write a blog post, you then repurpose that out to your email list as well. And how do you get people to sign up for your email list? How are you attracting new leads to your email list?
So usually if it's within the blog post, I usually have a graphic or the form right there. If there's a relevant freebie or free resource that I have for the topic of the blog post, then somebody can sign up right there. Also in the sidebar, I have my most recent freebie right there for people to sign up for. Sometimes if I'm doing a special promo or something that I'm really focused on promoting, I also use ConvertBox now,
Mhm.
which does really user-friendly pop-ups that you can really target to your blog content too. Like I've set one up where I have a content marketing mistakes guide that people can download. So I have that little pop-up set through ConvertBox to pop up on any blog post that has the word content in the title. So you can really tailor
Genius.
them. Yeah.
That's awesome. I've only heard of it. I've never used it. Okay. That's really, really cool. I'm a little bit of mind blown here. Okay. So it's using, but like you said, it's using everything. It's the SEO, the keywords, the all of it. And it just all tracks each other and follows each other around. That's okay. Very cool. So if somebody's listening to this, they're trying all the things. They're an introvert, they're trying all the extrovert things. Where do you suggest starting first on this kind of digital footprint that all works together for them?
I think the big thing is deciding on what's going to be your primary method. And I always recommend and go to blogging because I love it. But I think when I say that, sometimes people have thoughts of, well, how often do I have to write blog posts? What if I'm not a writer? And there's so many ways to work around that that don't even involve outsourcing. Like I I do write a lot of content, but I do struggle with writer's block sometimes. So I've written many blog posts just recording my voice in a Google Doc and
Mm,
using the voice typing tool. And then I just go through and like edit for grammar and format it. Um, and I really love Jasper, which is an AI writing tool. I've tried a lot of them, and it's by far the best one I've ever used. So if you start writing a blog post, well, they have a lot of templates, first of all. So they'll help you outline a blog post. If you have an idea, it'll help you come up with content ideas related to whatever you put in. And the quality that it gives you is really great. So even if you're writing a blog post and you're stuck, and you can just click the button in Jasper and it'll write the next paragraph for you.
that's cool too. Okay. Learning a lot today. So clearly, introverts can run a successful business. It seems like you have been booked out for a while now. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. I've even moved away from the one-to-one services and now focus more on like the evergreen digital products, the courses, because again, those are even more introvert friendly than
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
one-to-one with clients. So
So how did you kind of navigate the working with clients part as an introvert? Was that something that you ever not struggled with might be too big of a word, but ever kind of had a little bit of a struggle of, oh, I'm not necessarily loving this one-on-one client work. How did you kind of navigate some of that area?
yeah, it was hard in the beginning because you feel like you have to kind of like saying no and setting boundaries like, oh, I don't think this client is a good fit for me, but the money is too tempting. It's hard to um, you know, say no to any client that comes your way. So I did take on some clients that were not a good fit and it was not a good experience. And I got to the point eventually where I set boundaries and I made the choice to let them go. And my energy and my mental health was worth more than working with a client who just wasn't a great fit. And I think that's something that's really key, because if you started a business to have freedom and flexibility, you really have to prioritize that. Because if you start working with a client that's micromanaging constantly, you need to really either set boundaries, and then if those boundaries are still not not working for the client, then you have to prioritize yourself and your business and let them go, because there will be better clients out there.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Now, you kind of already answered this question, but this is something I ask all of my guests. So we define the term on brand as, I don't even like using this word, I have to change the definition, as being authentic to yourself, kind of like what we were talking about before, and choosing the ways that work best for you. So I know you kind of mentioned you were not doing that. You were not necessarily living on brand to yourself inside your business. Is there another time that you can think of where you were kind of running your business, or in your life somewhere off brand, and how did you realize that, and how did you navigate back to being on brand? And if that is the biggest example that you shared earlier, we can go with that answer, but I always just like to ask.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest example. But I think at the time when I like had my self-acceptance moment, and I'm like, I'm going to own that I'm an introvert, and focus on my strengths and be who I am, I think that wasn't even just a business decision. That was also like, it affected my entire life, because I always felt like, as an introvert, as a quiet, reserved person, that there was something wrong with me. And it was when I had that moment of, this is just who I am. I need to like, I don't want to change. This is like, I like how I am. So I think that moment of acceptance, it really helped me become on brand, not only in my business, but also my life too.
Yeah, love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. So my last question, or my wrap up, is there some last pieces of advice that you have for our introvert listeners who are running or growing their business? And there's kind of a 3-part question here. What are you working on, or what other resources can you share with them, and where can we find more of you?
Yeah. So my best piece of advice for introverts is, don't be afraid. If it's fear holding you back, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. You know, I've worked with a lot of introverts who, they were totally scared to come on a podcast and do an interview, but then they ended up loving it. So it's okay to push yourself outside your comfort zone to try things. But if you try something and you find that it's just not for you, find another way, because there's so many ways to market and grow your business and increase your visibility that are really going to feel good to you and not be so energy draining. I do have a lot of free resources. Like I said, email marketing is one of my favorite things, and I do teach on a lot of different marketing topics and channels. So I have a lot of freebies. They're all listed on my free resources page on my website at thetarareid.com.
Awesome. And are you on Instagram at all? Do you post some relevant, even infographics for us to learn from?
I am, but I'm actually planning on leaving Instagram again.
Love it.
Once my scheduled content is all done, I'm going to be posting a goodbye. If you want to keep up with me, get on my email list, join my private Facebook group. So
email, and are you on Pinterest as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So email, your blogging, and your Pinterest seem like where we should come hang out with you a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll put all of that in the show notes below. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. I found this very helpful and valuable as an extroverted introvert. So I'm sure our introverts will love listening to this episode. But stay in touch, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.